how I wanted to model Black Mariah on Madam Queen, and at the same time, you know, have this kind of feel of, you know, other members of the Harlem underworld, like, you know, the fact that Cottonmouth was going to kind of be have a little bit of Nicky Barnes or a little bit of Frank Lucas, you know, matched with kind of, you know, the swaggered attitude of Bumpy. Mentioning legendary figures like that, but then at the same time saying that we were going to, you know, really talk about the culture of Harlem and talk about the fact that it's a place where, you know, Duke Ellington and Minton's Playhouse and James Brown and how so much culture is kind of passed through there in addition to the politics. I think she understood that this was a different kind of show. And so getting someone like Alfred in a way was our Marlon Brando, you know, the same way how Marlon Brando anchored the cast of The Godfather, and as a result allowed a young Pacino, a young James Caan, and a young Robert Duvall, you know, to really kind of push to the next level. I think that was the thing, was that everybody kind of pivoted off of her, but then at the same time, they're bringing such A-game like level acting. I mean, you know, once you're talking about Mahershala and Mike and Theo and Frank and Simone and Rosario, you know, Ron Cephas Jones as well, who is a supporting character, but brings just such flavor. And the reason you see him everywhere, because he's like Sam Jackson. Everywhere, every show you put him on, he adds a different flavor to himself. And it's just kind of this elemental thing. When you're talking about acting on that level, the writing has to match it. And if the writing matches it, and then at the same time you're telling comic book stories in addition to real stories, I mean, everything around it, it's just, oh my God, it was just incredible. And I think that we're going to accomplish things that people never would have anticipated from this kind of show.
Oh my goodness, that's so exciting. And it's very interesting that you bring up Hype Williams' Belly, because that movie had so many musical influences to it. And the music on this show is fire. I mean, it's some of the best music that I've heard, and I love that you elect to title each episode after a song. And you've got a background in music journalism as a writer for Vibe magazine. How important was the music for the telling of this story, and why did you see a need for it?
There's music in everything I do, even though I can't sing. But, I mean, the thing is that music has always propelled me. It's always been the kind of glue that has connected me to my people. Because I was born in New Haven, but I grew up in Storrs, Connecticut. And Storrs is where UConn is. And, you know, now, of course, it's the home of many a basketball champion, male and female. But before that happened, I mean, it was basically a cow town. I mean, that's not even to diss it. It's just like I was always the only black kid in my class. I mean, really from 1st through 8th grade, I was the only black male. And so in one way, it kind of prepared me for the isolation of the writer's room, you know, and from the standpoint of you get used to being the only one. But the thing about it is that any kind of connection that I had to hip hop for me was really personal, because I took it more seriously than anybody else, because like when my cousins would, you know, who lived in Montclair, New Jersey, you know, if they taped Red Alert off of Kiss FM and they came for Christmas and just kind of discarded the tape, like, oh, you can have this, I was like, I held on, oh my God, thank you so much. And I would memorize tapes and I would just listen to artists, and I was pre-internet, you know, you had to kind of track all these groups down, like really like the back of a Public Enemy record, in the liner notes had all the different groups that were coming up. So that was kind of the first time you heard of Leaders of the New School or Tribe Called Quest or Native Tongues or De La Soul or X-Clan. Because what they would do is, you know, they would have the Extra Strength Posse, and they would all like list all these different groups, and you hadn't heard them yet. And unlike now with the internet, we can Google a name and hear a song. You had to track those things down. I mean, it was basically almost like some like almost comic book collector / Dungeons and Dragons culture, where, you know, instead of trying to find the rare set of dice or, you know, at the same time create a campaign or you know, find a rare comic, you were trying to like find these records or hear these records. I just took it very seriously. So then as a result, everything I do is basically has either a hip hop base or, you know, is connected, because it was the only connection I really felt to, you know, black kids my age. You know, it wasn't disposable culture to me. I mean, I studied it like anything else. And so when it comes to the show, for me, it had to be the right hip hop. It wasn't just about having rap. It was about hip hop that said something that resonated. So that's, for me, was why it was 90s hip hop. In addition to that, the whole Gangstar thing, that kind of comes back to my initial pitch. When I went into the room, with Jeff and, Kareem, the second pitch was, the one that ultimately got me the job. I was probably more nervous for that pitch than almost anything I'd ever done up to that point. So I was trying to calm myself down by saying, look, just try to, relax, and instead of going in with one episode in your mind, think of how you would arc an entire story. And one thing that's an interesting influence that people wouldn't guess is, for me, it's Shonda Rhimes, because I'm a huge Grey's Anatomy fan. It's, basically anything Shonda does, whether it's Grey's Anatomy, Scandal, or How to Get Away with Murder. And with Scandal, she always named every episode after a popular song. There's something that you eventually begin to notice. So I said, okay, let me think of 13 different titles. So at the very least, I can think thematically of just almost like a game, like how I could just kind of figure out how to walk Luke Cage through a scenario. And so I just basically started going through my iTunes, and eventually going through stuff. I kind of used a trick that we used to use back in the day with hip hop journalism, is that you take a song title and make that a cover line. And so, not basing it on actual content of the song or anything, just what a title kind of invokes. So you hit Moment of Truth, and then you hit BYS and, Take It Personal and these other titles. I'm like, wait a minute, Gangstar's, because I've always loved the group, there's this theme work in play. So here's the opportunity kind of to walk Luke through a scenario. So Moment of Truth is when Luke discovers that, okay, this is the moment where I'm going to step out as a hero, whether I want to or not. Who's going to take the weight is that he's reminded that there are rules, unwritten rules, and this is the consequence of having stepped up. It's really when Luke, to a certain extent, by invading Crispus Attucks, is, finally taking on the mantle of responsibility and also basically answering that question. He's going to take the weight. And so it was that kind of thing that, for me, was just in kind of my mind thinking of how do you string out 13. And as we got deeper into it, that initial kind of playful thing just solidified the more that we got closer to the actual vision of what the show was. So I think it's funny because I think some people kind of think that those song titles, came at the end, but in this weird way they kind of came at the beginning.
Awesome.
Wow. That's amazing. As you said, Marvel fans are a very particular breed, and with this show there's an opportunity to bring in new fans. So what aspects of Luke Cage's personality did you feel most necessary to highlight when presenting his character to the audience?
Well, he had to be smooth. You know what I'm saying? I mean, he had to kind of be assertive, but not in a flashy way. He had to be confident. I basically wanted him to be a character that, women would fall in love with, but then at the same time have the kind of brawn that, male viewers and fanboys would also be like, oh, I want to be like that. But then at the same time have the kind of heroic savvy, but savoir-faire that fangirls will get into as well. So to me, I mean, he really had to be Big Daddy Kane, because Kane and Rakim, but particularly Kane was kind of, the perfect test subject. I mean, Kane or LL. Because the one thing about a Kane record is that, back in the day, women loved Kane. He was kind of a smooth operator. But then at the same time, as an MC, I mean, he was one of the fiercest battlers ever. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, he kind of had to, if I'm going to steal from Kane, my favorite Kane metaphor is from the song Raw, where he said, so full of action, my name should be a verb. I mean, that's like Luke Cage to me. It's just something elemental about the character. I mean, whether you want to call it the Shaft of the Marvel Universe, I think it's cool because that's what appealed to people about Shaft, was the fact that, he was hotter than Bond, cooler than Bullet, like the movie title said. I mean, he really was somebody that was black, but at the same time, there was something about his sophistication, just the fact that he's hanging out in Harlem, but he lives in the village. I mean, he's kind of bridging two worlds, and I think that's the thing about Luke Cage. I think that's really ironic, the fact that, of course, in Jessica Jones, there's kind of a village vibe, even though they're in Hell's Kitchen, and then now he's uptown. So I guess the Shaft roots of Luke Cage are deeper than even I'm thinking of right now.
Right. So how do you feel that fans will respond to a Luke Cage story during this political climate, and are you excited about this?
We didn't mean for it to be political. We just told the truth. And unfortunately, things have gotten worse, but things have always been tough for us as black people. And, when you tell the truth about it, really the sad part is just how these issues have not gone away. So I kind of wish that the things that we deal with in the show were dated, because I wasn't really like specific by design. I mean, you can't anticipate that, you know, after what's happened, like these rash of shootings and just everything that's going on. But at the same time, you know, we knew that with some of the things we were doing, the show could be socially relevant. So what I say is that it was never the intention, but at the same time, we never shirk away from the meaning of having a black hero in this current world. To me, Luke Cage was always going to be a black hero, meaning that I wanted him to be somebody that was black by choice and by design, not by coincidence. You know what I mean? I didn't want him to kind of be, oh, he's black, by the way. You know, that wasn't my thing with Luke Cage. I mean, he's a brother, straight up. But at the same time, that doesn't really color how he attacks crime or position in the world. It's basically that he comes from a conscious place, but it doesn't prevent him from helping anyone in need. It's the reason why, even though this is a very strongly, unapologetically black take on the character, it doesn't contradict the Luke Cage that was introduced in Jessica Jones. If anything, what it does is it expands who it is he is and his complexity, because I think sometimes people don't understand that you can be universal and at the same time be deeply black. And that was the thing that I really wanted to do with this. Is I didn't want to contradict the Luke Cage of Jessica Jones. I wanted to kind of expand on the world of Luke Cage because, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, it's like, in a way, you have two selves. Not that your self is different in the white world than you are in the black world. It's just more expansive. And so, like, here's the thing. In Jessica Jones, you never followed him home. You never followed him when he got a haircut. You know, you never followed him when he was hanging out with anybody. So that's what this show is. So I think the thing is, once he's in the Defenders, there's probably going to be less culture in this respect, but then that's what will make this Luke Cage series always resonate, because you know that anytime you watch this show, there is going to be some kind of cultural aspect, and it's a prideful cultural aspect that at the same time is what I call inclusively black as opposed to exclusively black, meaning that I really wanted people to go off the deep end of the culture without explanation, but then at the same time do it in such a way where they're sucked into the world rather than, you know, they feel like they're being catered to. It's kind of a cinematic approach. I mean, it's kind of the way you feel like if you watch Woody Allen's Manhattan and, you know, that's kind of a deep end of like, you know, Upper West Side, you know, New York kind of literary culture. And then at the same time, if you also are, you know, watching a movie like Goodfellas or Mean Streets, you know, you're deep in these neighborhoods. Nobody's talking as if anyone else is listening. So it's kind of unfiltered. You know, the thing is like, that's really the thing I love about a show like Atlanta. Atlanta to me is, man, it's just incredible how deep that show goes. I can't believe that Donald Glover got away with that shit, honestly. I mean, like literally, I mean, yeah. It's like, I guess the censors fell asleep at the wheel or something. I'm like, man, I mean, this is like, you know, you didn't think that it was possible to do that kind of show. But that's the thing. Like, I mean, you know, rather than Atlanta and Queen Sugar and Power and Greenleaf, yeah. You know, rather than it being competition, I honestly see it as a celebration. Because for the first time, we have expansive stories that just show, like, just how deep and how rich and how unique the black experience is, and how when you watch shows, you're introduced to all these different aspects of black people. And so I think from an outsider's perspective, they're like, man, we hear diversity, but we never knew it was this deep. But from internally with us as a people, we watch these shows and we're seeing just like our cousins and our aunts and just all these different sides of our family and the entire socioeconomic spectrum of the black experience. I mean, it's never been expressed in this way. You know, we hit a lot of deep things on the show that people aren't going to expect, but the thing about all those other shows is it's like, wow, like we finally have the visual diversity of opinions that actually matches the diversity of hip hop in its heyday. Because, you know, A Tribe Called Quest, De La Soul sounded different than Ultramagnetic. And Ultramagnetic sounds different than the Ghetto Boys. The Ghetto Boys sound different than NWA. And